Greetings, Countess Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome once more. Are you ready to dive into some Pathfinder lore? It's going Golarion. We're visiting a new nation today I haven't talked about yet, and one that maybe in the future I will revisit again. This is one of those nations where I have a good chunk of information I can set up and show it off, and most of it's centered around one of their major cities. Meaning that there's probably other cities or places in the nation that we don't know as much about with, or the region, I should really say, more, because it's kind of like a nation, yet not a nation. It's an interesting situation. We'll dive in and talk about that. So we'll be visiting, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Iblydos. Iblydos is an interesting nation, and I'm going to show you some books off that we can look into, because information on it is incredibly scattered. Now, information on its one city, Iblydos, is pretty pretty out. But if we're going to look at books that I could recommend for some further study, campaign setting mentions some few things, Inner Sea World Guide does, the Lost Element World Guide mentions very little but some. And then we get into Lost Treasures, Lost Kingdoms, and of course, Distant Shores. And Distant Shores is the one where Iblydos is particularly mentioned, and a lot of Iblydos, the country as a whole, is kind of seen. But it's also like a country that's not a country, that's a region. It's complexities because there are city-states. Now that is the flag of Iblydos, so that's the flag of that, and its former united nation of Olirant, which has fallen. We'll talk about that, because we have to kind of talk about this region too. It's on the coast of Kazmaron in the Ubari Ocean. It has some of the oldest known human civilizations in Kazmaron. These are important things to know about. And it's it's a set of islands, kind of in a group. So that's kind of a we can zoom in on here. I'll try to throw this over here so you can kind of see a picture, because I don't have a good map. That's what it looks like. That chunk of islands there. The map. This is it here. So there you go. So giving you an idea of what it looks like there. Now, we don't know a lot about this time, this ancient land in the region, from the old days, the earliest history. We know there's often grouped in with other ancient empires on the continent, such as Kashkiri, Ninshabur. It's though unclear whether it was just located in the same general region, it was part of one of these kingdoms or empires at the time. Those few histories which mention a connection with those lost empires indicate that Iblydos had long-standing contact with the Cyclops nations of the continent and those labeled the Olirant. So, now we have to talk about Gulg, the Cyclops nation. The one that fell and was already doomed at the time of Earthfall, but really it spelled the full end of it at that point in time. And the people of Iblydos actually owe their existence to Cyclops and Gulg. During the decline and doom of the species, of course, there was a number of them that foresaw Earthfall. But during their decline, I've kind of talked about it before, they went into hedonism, sacrifice, blood rituals, horrible things. They basically were degenerate. And so, a few that chose to basically resist this degeneracy traveled to Iblydos. They fled there. They could see the self-destructive way that their people were. They brought with them the prophecy of the destruction, and they could understand that they had to unite with the Iblydians, the people that were already there, to avoid this great destruction and the disaster of Earthfall. And, yeah, as things began to change, the humans went to them for guidance, and they basically worked together to survive Earthfall and the Age of Darkness that came after. And it was some millennia that this partnership actually thrived. Cyclops of Iblydos were strong. but they have dwindled. Many have lost intellect, profit, powers. Some have lashed out to be human, only to be chased off the islands or into the hills. And so those that have maintained clarity, and those that have maintained the old blood, have dwindled in numbers into small specialty cities or temples that they existed. And this was also due to the failing of leadership of the Cyclops people, and it dwindled the ties with the very city-states of Iblydos. They fragmented and warred with each other, created small alliances, fragmented again, turmoil, and prophecy failed. And this was the way of Iblydos for a long time. A bunch of city-states which have unique, similar cultures. So that's why us bringing out and talking about Iblydos is not bad. Because it is a culture which is invocative of the rest of Iblydos. Even though we don't have the rest of the island territory, the island territories. Lycoria was one of the 9 great historical city-states. It had, similar to some of the other city-states in Golarion now, in like Varisia, where there's one main city-state and a bunch of smaller ones that are smaller cities that are connected with it. Lycoria had Lycoria. It dated back to the Age of Destiny. It had both 2 of the first hero gods, which are beings of power there, and Cyclops mysticism. Unfortunately, Lycoria has fallen as of late. Lycoria, well, at the end of the Age of Last Omens, a Cyclops called out heralding the return of a primordial Leviathan from the depths, a thalassic behemoth known as Osmariku. It swallowed Lycoria's navy, and months later, attacked by 10 of the greatest hero gods of the archipelago. They challenged it and lost their lives, and they failed to save Lycoria, which was then destroyed by this beast. Refugees have crowded the interior capital of Iblydos ever since, fleeing from Lycoria. The ruins have been claimed now by, an unfortunate group moving in of Sidathis. And now Osmariku basically hounds Iblydos every year for tribute to Peace's wrath. For another year of peace. So yeah. So Cyclops society has kind of fallen, and this major area here, where we have the core of some of the city-states, is in shambles because of a massive behemoth from the sea. The last hero gods age, the heroes gods have dwindled, and basically they're at a point in time where they need a new group of heroes to defeat the beast, because the former ones failed. And it was the Cyclops that predicted the rise of the hero gods, those that could earn great mythic power, aka the people with mythic abilities to be found here in hero gods. Mechanically. So Cyclops society, even though it's dwindled, has stabilized, though, on the islands, in the nation. Some have felt that they should go out into the wider world and rebuild the former empire of their people. They're joining a group called the Resurgence, who began about 500 years ago when an oracle named Quebecma reported having visions of Cyclops needing to participate in a bloody war with deep sacrifice, and it would end with Golgon and Kalora being reestablished. So many saw this as senile rabblings. The seeds of this have been planted in some of their society. So, let's talk about Iblydos, and then, of course, the city-state, because there's another nice picture of their city-state, which we can mention, because we know just these two city-states, the fallen Lycoria, which had been great, and now Eleusos, which is still very powerful. Eleusos might have been powerful enough to become independent on its own, if it wasn't so connected with Lycoria originally. But vast mazes exist beneath Iblydos, and with these catacombs, the Minotaurs emerge. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about other beings like them that exist here. But yes, let's talk about their two cities, the ones we know about. Of course, Lycoria is in ruins. The capital of the city-state region of Pol Lycoria, and lost. Either killed or fled to Iblydos. The Islet Coast is the westernmost city of note in the archipelago. It is a gateway to Iblydian culture and hospitality to most travelers of the Obari crossing. And due to its many gardens and tireless work of the city, it is an overall picture of peace, rest, comfort, trade. It looks very nice. Now, they are protected here by two surviving hero gods, which I'm going to butcher their names of: Kelk Siomorides and Pasimoria. And of course, things like the chief myth speaker Paizo of the Cyclopses. Their unique council together creates the mythic oligarchy which is in charge of this place. So yes, Paizo basically consults on matters and uses their wisdom. It's a council of guild, religious, military, and community leaders that regularly discuss and legislate basic issues. Though again, their council's votes are non-binding, the two oligarchs have the honor of decisions. So Paizo has got the ear of the oligarchs, the two hero gods. And there's a council that basically puts together everything and presents it to them, and they get to decide. And and they also then, honestly compete with each other a lot, but they have a fucking giant sea beast to deal with that they kind of can put their fighting aside to deal with a little bit there too. And then several times a year, one or both of these hold public courts to hear cases, settle grievances, leading day-to-day operations to magistrates, notaries, and other public figures. Hero God's rules are accepted. They're semi-divine figures that's supported by millennia of tradition. But it's not an exclusive state religion. Most divine spellcasters in the city are actually oracles. Though those that have had their lives directly saved by a hero god will devote themselves to them as clerics, sometimes. And the minimalist approach of these oligarchs is a product of Iblydian culture, as is wise governance. For over the course of the numerous regime changes, Iblydians have learned that there is no one right way to accomplish a task, be it governing, farming, or eating a meal. They maintain well-intentioned rivalries, both of their ancestors and of their own, as an extension of their drive for excellence and potential. So you can see that's why talking about this place is very good for understanding Iblydian culture. So it's also a city of interesting juxtapositions, because parts of the city have flooded as a result of both the Age of Lost Omens and the giant sea monster that has risen from the sea. That kind of thing. So, in the parts of the city that have submerged, merfolk have moved in. They're able to safely travel inland and trade with locals and tourists. And it's basically a gathering point for food and equipment for adventurers that need underwater expeditions. And seafood is, known for being important. It's on an inlet in the northern coast of Lalisri. That's the name of the island, and the Iblydian archipelago. It's built around a deep yet narrow harbor that is well protected from but the daily flooding after the death of the Eridan has changed. Low-lying areas are now the new waterfront. So most of the docks are built on floating platforms that rise and fall up to 15 feet during the day. During the filled Pantheon Hill at the heart of the city became a small island accessible by boat and a pair of suspension bridges that cross over inundated neighborhoods from east to west. It serves as the central island contains several ornate marble structures as well as eclectic shrines to the city's past hero gods. Mansions of the ones in Pearl's district in the northwest became separated from the mainland during the flooding. Most of its owners refused to abandon their homes, even though much of their property is underwater for most of the day. And there's some dry areas too. So we do have this mixture of the aquatic and the land. So I'll go over briefly the districts here. The Flood Market, of course, is near the docks, and it was the bazaar beforehand, with large warehouses and storefronts. The tidewater fluctuations have made it suffer the brunt of this, so it's flooded for most of the day and hosting brief market days when waters recede. The warehouses still stand open, inhabited now by mussels and crabs that feast on whatever waves deliver. Hades is the place now that has the shipping areas. Podmonsis, okay, so Hades is where the shipping companies of Iblydos extend the piers and construct storage facility outside the city walls, basically, up on dry land. And then Hadamos is, in turn, where protected warehouses of more valuable goods are, and they were originally there for that. Now they've begun getting more common stuff too, because hey, they're the only warehouses that survive. Kamsados is a gentle slope of the middle-class neighborhood that extends from the ocean, with some sandbars that protect their homes from the waves. Pantheon Hill, of course, I mentioned, the island. The old sewers. There were gravity-fed sewers, more than adequate to keep the streets clean, and the urban swell to a minimum. With the tides at natural heights, it's hard to tell which distresses the city more, the rampant flooding or the sudden reverse flushing of untreated sewage as waves swept up the pipelines. The Pearls, of course, I mentioned, is the rich part of town. The Seer Heights is especially dense mass of metamorphic rock and steep-sided acropolis that's crowned with low retaining walls to create relatively flat foundation, and resident of the handful of truly ancient columned temples and pillared marbles. And Cyclops live in that area, with a few servants and students and servants who reside there on a temporary basis. The hero god Callismodes led the initiative to terrace the northern slope, creating 2 narrow cliff gardens for the Cyclops to take. The Shallows is the sloppy topography of the city that helps the water drain back into the ocean during low tide, but there's a shrunken stretch that's perpetually inundated. The Shallows. And of course Southgate, with the push to beautify that Calcidimes, the hero god, did. Basically, it's little farmlands and speckles of stuff with renovations and constructions to make efficient use of spaces and living conditions around that area. And those are the districts of the city. Gives you an idea of how it is. The citizens here are well-educated, cosmopolitan, with their tutelage under both the Cyclopses, the foreign ideas brought about ocean trade, and it has a large population of humans, merfolk, geniekin, both sylphs and undines, Cyclops, fays, and others. An interesting, very cosmopolitan city that its location means that there are a lot of people that visit. And that means something for Iblydos. As a note, though, I will say, forms of wrestling originated here as in Arcadia. The Iblydian form of wrestling focused on grappling techniques, so if a well-trained wrestler ever finds himself in the battlefield, they still have the means to fight even when disarmed. Finally, we can talk about some inhabitants of the Isle, the Minotaur. said, originated. But we do have to mention religion a little bit, because Iblydos is the birthplace of the mortal Minotaur that would someday become Demon Lord Pathfinder. His faith does remain strong here, still, as a holdout, because he was born here. But also mysterious cults devoted to the belief that Cyclops are some form of divine beings. These practices are generally somewhat variant of the adoration of the eye. But Iblydos is known to be a birthplace of many infamous monsters. Medusas, hydras, harpies, chimera. The sphinxes, the mythical race, have a long history here, as they do in Osirian culture. A race of half-men known as the centaurs are said to originate in Iblydos as well, and the minotaurs hail from the sun. Some of this might change as of note, especially as we can learn more about the centaurs from the book Howl of the Wild that is out around now. So keep that in mind, that little bit of information may change a little bit. But many of the dangers along the coastline include Portanuses, originally from the Plane of Water, and a powerful ashore born from demigods, Chapelisora named Polocomion, makes his home in the nation, having claimed to rediscover the art of mythsy. But there you go, there's a general idea of Iblydos. And yes, there's not a lot here. And I'm going to tell you, Iblydos wears its influence on the sleeve. Now, this is something I haven't dived into a lot, because certainly when I'm speaking about various locations in Golarion, they are their own unique, interesting cultures, or people, or things like that. But certainly when I'm speaking about things like human ethnicities, various nations, plenty of us out there can see there's a lot of influence of our world. Now, I will also say our world does exist in the Golarion sphere. It's just a different time period. You can travel to her. There's an adventure path for that. So keep that in mind, too. There's an adventure path for that. We are Golarion, we are connected to it. But we in the past, like around World War I time period. That's the kind of time period. In comparison time-wise, where we're looking at Golarion now. But even with these connections, and I talked about them in my Osirian video, where the ancient gods of Osiria originally had worship on Earth. The Egyptian gods that we know about are the Assyrian gods. In the same way, this nation here, it screams of Greece. Iblydos is very Grecian in a lot of ways, an ancient Grecian. And certainly speaking, they've had their own unique, interesting history. But the initial culture, as you can see pre-evolution, is one that very connects up with a lot of our ideas. And the nation itself, hey, it's supposedly, according to information, birthed a bunch of monsters, which, hey, are very famous in Greek-related stories and art. So, again, would I want to see more of Iblydos? Of course, and if we get a lot more, I will definitely do another episode where I speak about it more in detail, because I would like for us to develop more. Certainly there are places in the world that connect up with our real-world ideas and cultures, but I feel like it's the most interesting thing that we have this start point, but we can see where it evolves in interesting and different ways. The Assyrians are not the Egyptians, but they definitely have this similar culture because of the deities that are connected with them, and the areas they developed. There are other nations which can harken back to ancient and powerful empires and nations in our history. Some of them which can match. The Ulfin people oftentimes are looked at, and some of them are called Vikings. They have a very Scandinavian-type feel to them, but they are very different than the Scandinavians we know also because of the way they developed in culture. And certainly for Iblydos, something that feels very Greek. I would like to see more development. And the nation itself is interesting and fascinating. When we talk about one nation we know about from distant shores of Eliosos. Eliosos, as this small remnant of a nation who harbored on this danger from a giant sea beast, is an amazing story and has so much richness to it. And the nation itself has so much rich culture we can kind of dive into and talk about. it's the sheer fact that I had to look up a lot of stuff in the Distant Shores book because there just wasn't anything from everywhere else. And it gave me so much to go on and learn about by this Iblydosian set of things, from their culture and weaponry and different abilities that they had and things like that, and places and information that just spread a unique look into a culture that we know very little about, but it is an incredible example of that culture. That's what some of these nations I've spoke about, you only have this one city. This one city in this entire nation gives us this huge look at it and gives us an understanding about it. A nation of hero gods. A nation of myth. That's what it is. With Cyclops prophets who are wise and help lead the people in a direction. And there are people that are open to interpretations and ideas because they believe there are things that can be, if something doesn't work, we can try something new and different to do better. A nation of thinkers. Interesting. And I would love to see some more cities and city-states here and learn more about Iblydos. But for now, we got that view of it. We got an interesting place to visit. And I hope you enjoyed learning all of that. And maybe in the future I will revisit this. But that'll be it for today. I hope you enjoyed me. Remember to always check me out live if you're not with me right now on Twitch. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and backup day, early to mid-afternoon. Just depends on my life things. I announce on my social media, Discord and Twitter.com, or X. Whatever it is called now. Social media. Thursdays will be my Pathfinder day. It's the one I do come with Pathfinder. I do other tabletop-related stuff that does go on YouTube. I've got Crimson Queen on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. EST. It's Pathfinder First Edition live play. We're in Corvosa, playing a path version of the Crimson Throne Adventure Path. And then Saturdays on 6 p.m. is discussing tabletop. I talk about the news of the week and deeper discussion topics that help improve, hopefully help you improve as a player or game master with my associates. Anyway, yep. That'll be my main thing to shout out today. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to leave it here for you. Everybody out there, have a great rest of your day. Hope you enjoyed this. And till the next time we talk about Pathfinder, any other role-playing game, any other mechanics, or anything else like that, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.